Right, so we are holding on Amud Gimel, Daf Gimel Amud Bet, so it's page 3b. Let me try and share the screen with you. There it is. Okay, that's not right, is it? No, that's not right at all. Let's try again and share the screen. Sanhedrin, share that. There we go. Can you all see the screen? Give me a nod if you can see the Gemarah. Yeah, okay. Right, so we are holding over here. Now, where we ended off last week was we were trying to establish Rabbi Yoshia's, let's just make that a wee bit smaller. That's better. We were trying to establish Rabbi Yoshia's view as to whether he required an odd number of judges for the courts. And we will just go a little bit further back up here. And he, if you remember, seemed to quote Rabbi Yehuda, excuse me, Rabbi Yehuda for support for his view. And Rabbi Yehuda was the one who you'll recall who said that the great Sanhedrin was not made up of 71 people, i.e. the 70 men that Moshe was told to gather around him plus Moshe, but Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was it was made up of 70 people without Moshe, and therefore he did not believe that the Sanhedrin Gedolah should be 71, but should be 70. And Rabbi Yoshia brought that as a support for his position. We then said about Rabbi Yoshia, but hang on a minute, Rabbi Yehuda holds that that's only the case for the Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yehuda holds that there should be an odd number of judges for the lower courts. So how does Rabbi Yoshia square that with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? And what we said was over here, Rabbi Yoshua Adifa mid Rabbi Yehuda. He goes further. He actually is more consistent, and Rabbi Yoshia's opinion is that the courts do not require an odd number of judges. That's where we got to. I think we might have lost Leon. Leon, are you here? No, I think Leon. Oh, yes, you are there. Okay, fine. Right. So that's where we got to last time. We said that Rabbi Yoshia held that the courts do not require an odd number of judges in any level of court. So the Gemarah now asks, hang on a minute, Aval b'dinei mamonot lo, question mark. Is that the case? Hang on a minute, there may be an inconsistency here, says the Gemarah. Remember, the Gemarah's nemesis is inconsistency. The Gemarah hates inconsistency of opinions between the rabbis. They hate inconsistencies. So when there's an inconsistency, they have to try and iron it out. And that's what's happening here. Because right now we're holding at the point where Rabbi Yoshia says he doesn't require an odd number of judges at all. And the Gemarah says, hang on a minute, I don't think that's the case. What about dinei mamonot? What about monetary law? Ella haditnan, rather, have we not learnt? Now, the question to this is obviously a rhetorical question. Have we not learnt? And what I'm going to quote to you now, what the Gemarah is quoting you, is something from, as you can see over here, page 29a in our Gemarah. So when it says, have we not learnt? The answer is no, actually, we haven't yet learnt this, because it's on page 29a and we're only on page 3b. But as we said in the past, not only does the Gemarah expect you to know the whole of the Torah off by heart and all the psukim, it also expects you to know the Gemarah, even if you haven't yet learnt it. But it does give us a bit of a hand, because it doesn't just quote half the pasuk as it does with the Torah. It tells us what this Mishnah, which we will learn when we eventually get there on page 29a in about the year 2025, it's going to tell us what this Mishnah says. And this Mishnah over in page 29a says the following. Shnayim omrim zakai. Two people say, and it means judges, two judges say he is guilty. I beg your pardon, he is innocent. Ve'echad omer chayav. And the other one says he is guilty. And here we're talking about monetary matters, so probably not the correct expression, innocent and guilty. Zakai means that he doesn't have to pay anything, and chayav means he's obligated to pay. So two say he's exempt, and one says he's obligated. Zakai. The decision is that he is exempt. In other words, it's a 2-to-1 majority. Shnayim omrim chayav. If two of the judges say he is obligated, ve'echad omer zakai, and one of them says he is exempt, chayav, then he is obligated to pay. In other words, it's a 2-to-1 majority either way. That is what the Mishnah is going to tell us over in page 29a when we eventually get there. Now, that is a problem for Rabbi Yoshia, because Rabbi Yoshia has just told us that we don't need an odd number, and the extension of the fact that we don't need an odd number is that we need a unanimous verdict. Because if we only have two judges, which at this point it appears that Rabbi Yoshia would hold, then in order to, hang on a sec, Julia, in order to get to our verdict, we would need a unanimous verdict. And that, in fact, is what Rashi tells us on this particular point, that what Rabbi Yoshia's position appears to be at this point is that it's a unanimous decision that is required. Yes, Julia.
I just wanted to say that if I remember properly, right at the beginning of this section, we actually had Rabbi Yoshua saying that there should be 3 judges, because it said Elohim 3 times, and it was Rabbi Yonatan who said no, because you don't count the first time it's said. So surely, but Rabbi Yoshua therefore does think that there should be 3. He doesn't think that there should be 2.
Okay, so that's the position that we are trying to. That's a position of contradiction that we are trying to fathom out right now. We have gone into the next layer down, and remember, we're only halfway through this argument. So it's a back and a forth argument. It's a hypothesis. It's a destruction of that hypothesis. Okay, so it's a new hypothesis. So you're right to point out that actually both of them held that it was 3. They just got it from different places.
Yes. Yeah.
So we are at a point of contradiction. So where we're holding now is that, Rabbi, we've got a question that this Mishnah that we've just said is a 2-to-1 verdict. Nema, let us say, the nun at the beginning is for us, and Nema from Ema to say. Nema, let us say, Delo ka Rabbi Yoshia, that Rabbi Yoshia does not hold like this Mishnah. So if we are at our position as we are at the moment, that Rabbi Yoshia says that we don't need an odd number of judges, then it must be that he does not agree with this Mishnah. And we don't like it when he doesn't agree with the Mishnah, because that's contradiction. So what would he say? So here, as you can see, The Gemara rejects this possibility. No, says the Gemara. It's possible, afilu tema, it's even possible to say, Rabbi Yoshia, that Rabbi Yoshia does agree with our Mishnah. How so? How is that possible? Because Maitela Bekal V'chomer, Rabbi Yoshia can derive this majority rule from a Kal V'chomer. Okay, a Kal V'chomer is a very important concept in Gemarah. Those of you, oh, Michael's joined us, that's good. Those of you who will say in the morning in your tefillot, Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Bishlosh Esrei Midot HaTorah Nidreshet Bahen, that little section there, which is Rabbi Yishmael says that there are 13 exegetical principles. In other words, by the way, I never knew what that was till I was about 50. Exegetical principles are the methods by which the Gemarah usually establishes various rules. And of course, the famous and first of those is Mikal V'chomer. Kal from light or lenient, Chomer from machmir. Chamir means more strict. So it's in English it's translated. Well, it's not English at all. It's Latin. It's described as an a fortiori argument. A fortiori argument. I can never say that correctly. Have I said that right, Julia?
It would be a fortiori.
A fortiori argument. Okay. Yeah. So yes, it's we always called it a Kal V'chomer because it was easier to say Kal V'chomer than it was a fortiori. Yes, Howard.
A fortiori translates in English legal practices as how much more so.
Correct. How much more so, and that's what a Kal V'chomer is. So to give you an example, yes, Morris.
How is all this different from the B'nai Mishpatim they have here in Israel today?
Say that again, I didn't quite catch that.
How is this different from judgments of the B'nai Mishpatim, like the Beit HaMishpat Ezori, Beit HaMishpat Asheron?
Yeah, we don't actually have halachic law yet in this country. So what is a Kal V'chomer? A Kal V'chomer is a how much more so argument. Meaning, if somebody will say to me, I have difficulty climbing the stairs because I get breathless by the time I get to the top, but I think I'll go and climb Mount Everest tomorrow, I would say to that, well, if you're breathless if you climb a flight of stairs, how much more so are you going to be unable and be breathless to climb Mount Everest? The Kal there, the light case is the stairs, and the Chomer case is Mount Everest. So what the Gemarah is teaching us here is that Rabbi Yoshia could possibly use a Kal V'chomer argument to agree with our Mishnah, even if he doesn't say that we need to have an odd number of judges by definition, because he can use a Kal V'chomer. And what is the Kal V'chomer? What is the Kal V'chomer? He says, Uma dinei nefashot dechamiri, ama rachmana zil bata ruba. Just as if in the case of capital cases, if in dinei nefashot, a capital case, the chamiri, which is very strict, we would be absolutely, really, really very careful about the verdict in a capital case. Amar rachmana. Rachmana is the word from the word rachamim, which means mercy. So the merciful one said, who's the merciful one? Hashem. So Amar Rachmana is another way of saying that the Torah tells us. So the merciful one says, in other words, the Torah tells us, Zil bata ruba. Zil, go after the majority. Zil bata ruba. You should go after the majority. So in other words, you can decide a capital case on a majority. If you can decide a capital case, which is something you would be very, 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 very careful about, and you can do that with a majority, and you don't need a unanimous verdict for a capital case, Dine mamonot lo kol shekain, rhetorical question, surely then monetary matters, which are far less strict, we certainly would be more strict with a capital case than with a monetary case. And if in a monetary case we can use the majority verdict, then surely how much more so we should be able to use a majority for the monetary case. And Nachum, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, are we learning that the court would not require a majority when someone was going to be sentenced to death?
No, it does require a majority. It doesn't require a unanimous verdict.
Well, does it mean what's unanimous?
Unanimous means
there's everybody.
A 23 court judge.
Yeah.
I mean, a 23 judge court, right? You've got a court of 23 judges, which is the court that judges capital cases. 23 judges. 23,
yeah.
23. So a unanimous verdict would be all 23 vote the same way.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
We do not require a unanimous verdict for a capital case. Wow. We only require a majority of 2. So in other words, we would need a majority of 2 in a capital case. Okay?
That's hard to believe. I can't believe that. The Supreme Court of the United States just ruled in the last week that you must have a unanimous decision on a capital case. The jury must be unanimous. You can't kill anybody without having a majority, a unanimous ruling. So a man was sent to death on a 10-2.
Right. So
I'm shocked.
The halacha is that capital cases are decided on a majority ruling. It has to be a majority of 2, but it nevertheless has to be a majority. It does not require a unanimous verdict. As difficult as that may be to believe, that is the case. So, accepting that is the case, we can then see our kal v'chomer. In some ways, it's a chomer v'kal. It's a sort of upside down kal v'chomer, but it's the same principle. And that is, if we are lenient and allow majority verdicts as opposed to unanimous verdicts in a capital case, how much more so we would allow that in a monetary case. So therefore, we can say that Rabbi Yoshia can still allow himself the luxury of saying, I don't necessarily require an odd number of judges, but I still can go according to this Mishnah, where we have a scenario where we have a 2-to-1. I can allow that because of my kal v'chomer argument from the capital case. That's not to say, says Rabbi Yoshia, that I necessarily agree with the fact that there has to be an odd number by definition. I will hold, as Julia has said, I will hold that we need 3 in this case because of Elohim times 3, not because we necessarily have to have an odd number. So his arguments now, his position, the Gemarah has very cleverly put into line 3 different, potentially contradictory opinions of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yoshia said, I require 3 judges for monetary cases. I don't necessarily require an odd number, and I am prepared to accept a unanimous verdict. And the reason that they have managed to get these 3 ducks in a line of Rabbi Yoshia is that he uses 3 different proofs for each one. He has a different proof for each of those facts. The fact that he says they have to be 3 comes from the 3 uses of the word Elohim in Parshat Mishpatim, which we have spoken about many times. The fact that he doesn't require an odd number of judges comes from his reliance on the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says the Sanhedrin was of 70, and he extends that into the lower courts. And just in case you were going to challenge me with the Mishnah on 29a, the Gemarah has got in its retaliation first and has said, don't worry about that. Rabbi Yoshia has a kal v'chomer from capital cases to permit majority verdicts in monetary cases. So Rabbi Yoshia is all kushti, with his opinions all being nicely in line. There are no contradictions, and everybody is happy. So when everybody is happy that we have no contradictions we can move on to the next little subject. And in our little Gemarahs here, in our little boys' Gemarahs from Rav Steinzal, that is noted with this little symbol here, which means we're starting a new section. We've finished with that previous section called a sugya in Gemarah terms, and now we're moving on to another little section. Now, over here, we're going to see something very interesting. We go back now. We're talking about this 3 judges. Remember when we were talking right at the beginning of the Mishnah, the very first thing we did, what was it said? In Dinei Mamonot Bishlosha. 3 judges are required for monetary cases. That is what we have been talking about for the last however many months we've been doing it, 5, 6 months, whatever it is. We have been talking about 3 judges in monetary cases. So we would think that that was pretty much solid statement. It's right at the beginning of the Masechet. It's the first words of the first Mishnah. It's as basic as you get. However, Tanu Rabbanan, our sages have taught. Where have they taught this? Come on, where is it? Well, we don't know exactly where it is because this is a Braita. A Braita, remember, the Braita was the meaning from the word outside. These were the bits of the Mishnah that got left on the cutting room floor. They were not good enough, not solid enough, as it were, to make the final cut into the final edition of the Mishnah, written by, or redacted by, this person here, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because we are now going to quote something. We are now going to quote something from Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi himself, which he himself chose not to put into the Mishnah. Now that's very interesting. If I was writing the Mishnah, I would jolly well make sure it was my opinion that got into the Mishnah and somebody else's opinion that got left on the cutting room floor and became a Braita, because Mishnah has more power than Braita. Interestingly, though, this didn't happen. Let's have a look what the Gemarah says. Tanu Rabbanan, Dinei Mamanot Bishlosha. Monetary cases are dealt with by 3 judges. Rebbe Omer Bachamisha. Rebbe, whenever it says Rebbe, it says it's written here Rabbi, but in those who learn Gemarah will never call it Rabbi. They'll always say Rebbe. And Rebbe with no title. If we were to say, I mean, for example, in our little community, we have 3 people who are rabbis. But if you say the rabbi, it's obvious that you are referring to Ravido. You don't have to say Ravido each time. If you just say the rabbi, we know exactly who you are talking about. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was so much the rabbi that he was just referred to as Rebbe. Everybody knows that when you refer to Rebbe without a title, it's not Rebbe anybody else except Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So this Breita says Rabbi Omer. Rebbe says interestingly, where are we now? Yeah, if you look at the Leon, if you look at your art scroll, Leon's got his art scroll in front of him, and so have I. In the English translation of the art scroll, it actually says Rebbe, R-E-B-B-I. Rebbe says it doesn't even even the art scroll, which is meant for the art scroll English, which is meant for not for experts in Gemarah, even that expects us to know that Rebbe is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Steinsaltz, of course, is helping it out even further, and this Gemarah is for even sort of less experts. So he tells us everything about it, and he actually says he puts in those words Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, Bachamisha, 5 judges. Hang on a minute, our Mishnah told us 3, and now Rebbe tells us 5. What's going on here? So what's the reason? Kedei, in order, sheyigamer. The word there, the root of that word is ligmor, to finish. To finish. If you say something is nigmar, it's finished. And if you say beseder gamor, it means completely okay. It's okay to a finished degree. Okay, so kedei sheyigamer hadin bishlosha, so that ligmor din means to issue a verdict. So the din is the verdict, and ligmor din is to finish the verdict. In other words, to issue the verdict. So kedei sheyigamer hadin bishlosha, in order that the verdict can be issued on the say-so of 3 judges. Now, how do we work that out? What Rabbi Yehuda Nasi apparently is saying here is that, and bear in mind, he wrote it. When the Mishnah said, Dinei Mamonot Bishlosha, the monetary cases are judged by 3, what the Mishnah meant, and in brackets, if this was me, if I was Rebbe, I would say, and I should know because I wrote it, what it meant was that the verdict has to be given on the say-so of 3 judges. Now, if you need 3 judges who say the verdict, in other words, agree with the verdict, that's what he means, then the minimum that you require to have a majority will be 5, because you'll have 3 who'll say you have to pay, 2 who'll say you don't have to pay. That's a majority. That's the smallest majority you can get, where 3 judges all say the same thing. So according to Rebbe's interpretation of Dinei Mamonot Bishlosha, he says you need 3 judges who are all of the same opinion, and I need a majority, and therefore I can have 5 judges. I need 5 judges so that I can always have a majority, and I can always have 3 who will be saying the same thing. Yeah, does everyone understand that point? Anybody not grasp that? Yes, Johnny Halpin.
Can you not have 4 and a majority of 3?
You can't have 4 if you are one of those that hold that you need an odd number of judges, which is everybody.
Oh, okay.
Except for Rabbi Yoshia, but he's already said that he requires 3 judges.
Right.
So he's out of the picture. He doesn't agree with 5 at all. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is you need an odd number of judges because you've got to have a majority. And he also says this is the chidush. This is the new thing that we're bringing in here. This is the chidush on here, that he says 3 of these people have to say the same thing. Okay, so a bit of simple maths will tell us that if 3 of them have to say the same thing, and it has to be a majority, then we have to have 5 judges. So that is the basis of the Gemarah's suggestion from a Braita that Rebbe holds 5 so that the 3 will be the ones that all have the same opinion. Okay, if you have a look at this little note here, it'll tell you that in the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, remember we are learning Talmud Bavli, we are learning the Babylonian Talmud. There is a corresponding Talmud which was written in, wasn't actually written in Yerushalayim actually, but it's called the Jerusalem Talmud, which gives the same opinion that Rebbe says 5, but it gives a different reason for it. But we won't go into that because will just get us confused. We'll just stick with our Talmud Bavli, and I will Bli Neder, once we have finished the entirety of Shas in Talmud Bavli together, which at this rate will take about 1,000 years, we will do Talmud Yerushalmi. So I think we're pretty safe on that. But in the meantime, we'll concentrate on Talmud Bavli, and Rabbi Yehuda says 5 judges so that 3 of them can say the same thing. So the question is of the Gemarah. Hang on a minute. Atu bitlata mi loga gama dina bitre. Is that to say that with a court of 3 judges, a verdict cannot be issued by 2 judges? Which is exactly, I think, what Johnny Halpin just said before. No, he says. This is what he meant. You've misunderstood what we were talking about. The verdict itself has to be agreed by 3 judges, as we've just said. Alma, we see, or as he translates it better, evidently, Alma, we see, evidently, Kasavar, Rabbi Yehuda holds, Savar, he holds, Tlata, he holds that when the requirement for 3, Kiktivi, when that's written, Bigmar Dina Ktivi, it means that the verdict has to be issued by those 3 judges. Okay, so here we have a situation where we've said 3 judges are required by for monetary cases, and Rabbi Yehuda says that means 3 have to have the same verdict, and therefore we need 5. Okay, who, without looking on in the Gemarah, would like to tell me what the implications are for that very significant change in the approach that the Gemarah is taking? What would that imply for other cases? Any offers? Yes, Howard.
You're more likely to need 5 judges than make do with 3.
Say that again, sorry?
You're more likely to need 5 judges rather than make do with 3.
Okay, because it was Rabbi Yehuda, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That I would agree with that. As it so happens, that is not the halacha. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, but I agree that would be logic. That would be a logical thing to say, but as it happens, it's not. Any other offers for the implications of this very significant change in approach? Okay, well, let's see what the Gemarah says, because the Gemarah comes along and tells us that this is going to cause you a bit of a problem. If you're going to take this approach, remember, the Gemarah's nemesis is inconsistency or contradiction, and the Gemarah's first and only true love is consistency and agreement. Okay, so we're looking for consistency here. Very interesting word now. Megadef ba Rabbi Abahu. Megadef. Okay, here we need our Chumash experts. David Marks, I can't see you, but I can hopefully hear you. Where in the Torah do we hear about this word Megadef?
With the blasphemer.
Correct. And where would we find that?
End of Parashat Emor.
Can't catch you out yet today. I'll have to keep trying a bit harder. Okay, so
an hour later, I'm more awake.
Okay, so there was a story in the Torah of a Megadef, somebody who blasphemed God. To be a Megadef, you end up with you end up in a capital case. You end up with one of our cases here, because the Megadef is put to death. So this word Megadef is a blasphemer, and this is a very, very harsh word. It's a very harsh word to use. The Gemarah says here, Megadef ba Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu, he translates it here as ridiculed. I mean, he basically says, that is absolutely ridiculous what you have just said. That is nonsense. Megadef, he flicks it away and says, that's rubbish. Because the Gemarah doesn't like to have such harsh words, Leon is going to tell us another version of the Gemarah, which doesn't use the word Megadef. It uses a different word. Leon.
Rabbi Abahu made a gesture of surprise.
Beautiful, isn't it? Rabbi, this is how the Art Scroll translates it. Where are we? Yes. Rabbi Abahu made a gesture of surprise. The Art Scroll cannot countenance the idea that our great rabbis could ridicule one another, or could be harsh to one another, and so they do their usual whitewash job and translate this Megadef, which is clearly a very harsh word because of the blasphemer that we've just heard about before, and they translate it as Rabbi Abahu made a gesture of surprise, and they change the. If you have a look over here on our page here, Rabbi Steinsaltz says this over here. The word Megadef means blaspheme or sneer, and as such denotes a harsh refutation that mocks and discounts the other's opinion. According to the Geonim were the people that came after the Gemarah. They were the ones that between the Rishonim, the medieval, early medieval commentaries, between the Gemarah and the Rishonim came the Geonim, and they said the correct version is not Megadef, but Megaref with a reish. Instead of a dalad, it's a reish, which means to clear away. It's a word that anybody who has learnt Hilchot Shabbat to any degree will know that when you, if you learn the halachot of a blech, you have cut off the gorof. The coals have to be cleared away. So Megaref means to clear away. And they explain this term to mean that he would make a gesture of dismissal with his hand, similar to the movements of one who is clearing a plate. So, whilst we have some criticisms of Art Scroll on many occasions for whitewash. At least on this occasion, they have somebody to rely on for their whitewash. They can rely on the Geonim, who didn't like the idea of Rabbi Abahu ridiculing the Mishnah or ridiculing his colleagues. And so they changed it from Megadef to Megaref, or they didn't change it. They said it was a mistake. It shouldn't have been Megadef, should have been Megaref. Easy mistake to make. The difference between a Resh and a Dalad is a tiny little bit at the top right-hand corner. Easy to get those mixed up. It's just a very interesting, absolutely nothing to do with the Gemarah, but it's a very interesting little side issue that is demonstrated here by the use of this word. I would suggest to you two things. First of all, it's interesting that the Gemarah version that we have retains the Dalad and doesn't change it to Megaref, indicating that probably the primary view is that it was Megadef and not Megaref. And secondly, I have this picture in my head of the rabbis sitting around in Bavel, in Syria, or Pumbedita, which were the Oxford and Cambridge, Harvard and Yale of the Talmudic institutions. I have my naive view of these rabbis all sitting round a table discussing these issues, which is what the Gemarah is, and I have this picture of them, a few of them getting hot under the collar. We had a VAD meeting last night to discuss whether we were going to have minyanim outside the shul, and that got a bit heated, and people got a bit hot under the collar as to what was going on and which opinion was which. So I have this view of Rabbi Abahu sitting round the table, and let's imagine that Rabbi Abahu was quite a fiery character, and I can certainly imagine him getting hot under the collar and doing both of these things, making a gesture of surprise and also saying, I think your opinion's absolutely nonsense. Yes, Johnny?
Does the Yerushalmi Gemarah use the Talad or the Reish?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know if it even has the same exact words, because it's not an exact copy. They discuss the same. They discuss the same issues, but not necessarily in the same language. And anyway, it would be, I don't know, Rabbi Abahu, I don't think was a Yerushalmi rabbi. I think Rabbi Abahu was a Babylonian rabbi. So anyway, let's we've looked at that. Let's see what he actually says. What he says with his gesture of surprise is the implication that I was alluding to before. If so, Ella, if that's the case, me'ata, from now, in other words, from what you've said, the corollary of what you said, me'ata, means from now and onwards, which means the corollary of what you've said, tehei sanhedrin gdola, in that case, the great Sanhedrin, tzricha mea va'arba'im ve'echad. We would need 141 judges in the great Sanhedrin. Why would that be? Why would we need 141 judges? Julia, you're nodding your head. Tell us why we need 141.
Well, it's to allow for your the majority of 2, isn't it?
No, we can have a majority of 2 with
69. It's doubling it up.
It's doubling it up, that's right. Now, anybody else want to have a go? Why do we need 141 in the Sanhedrin Gedolah?
Does it have anything to do with the dividing into the 141, like a 3 or a 5? No, dividing. Okay.
Okay, let's go back. We said we needed 3 for monetary cases. Rabbi Yehuda said we need 5 because when it says 3, it means 3 who hold the same way. So with our Sanhedrin, the implication is, if that's what it means, we'll need 71 who vote the same way. Okay, so if you need 71 that vote the same way, and you need a majority, then you need to have 100, you potentially can have 141 judges, because you would, in order to get a verdict, you have to have 71 people who vote in the same way. We know that a Sanhedrin can vote on a simple majority, and therefore you need 71 on one who vote yes, 70 who vote no. Therefore, you need a total of 141 judges for the Sanhedrin. Does everybody understand the maths there? How we got to that? Okay, so I'll just say it again. The implication is this. We said you need 3 judges for a monetary court. Rabbi Yehuda said what that means is 3 judges who vote the same way to win the case. So 3 versus 2. The implication is you need that for every case, for every judge, court. Why should you only have that for monetary cases? So that means in the Sanhedrin, you have to have 71 people who vote the same way. And therefore, if you've got a majority, you'd have to have 141 judges in order to establish a case where you could have a 71 versus 70 situation. Yes, Howard, you had your hand up.
I was going to say the same thing. I assume there's no concept of an even number of judges and the chairman having a casting vote.
Well, no, you can't. Only according to Rabbi Yehuda, who said you would have 70 judges and not 71. But we don't go by him. We hold that the Sanhedrin was 71 because we need a majority. So if we need 71, we have to have 71 voting the same way. And so therefore you would need 141. Well, we know you don't have 141, don't we? Because we know that the Sanhedrin has to be 70 or 71, depending on your opinion, because it comes from the Torah. Okay, it comes from a pasuk. What does the pasuk say, David Marks? You shall gather for me 70 men. It's a pasuk. This is, remember, we spoke about it last time. Thank you, David. We spoke about it when the Bnei Israel in the desert said, I want flesh. Michael Leaf, where are you? Are you listening? They wanted meat. Oh, there you are. Okay. They wanted meat. So when they wanted meat, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't find meat. Where am I going to get meat from? Because, and I'm sick of these people anyway. They're too much for me. I can't bear them alone anymore. Hashem said, don't worry. I'll share the burden with you. Go and gather to me 70 men. As far the Shivim Ish. So that's where we get the Sanhedrin of 70 or 71, depending on your opinion, whether you're Rabbi Yehuda or everybody else. We definitely do not have any opinions that tells us that it's 141. So if it's not 141 and it's 71, that is a serious challenge to Rabbi Yehuda's, to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, to Rebbe's suggestion that the reason we need 5 is because 3 have to vote all the same way. Because if 3 have to vote all the same way in a monetary case, then 71 have to vote all the same way in a Sanhedrin case, which means our Sanhedrin has to be 141, and we know that it isn't. Yes, Leon?
If we accept Rebbe's view, there's a sort of kal vachomer here. The capital cases need a majority of 2.
Right.
If the Great Sanhedrin of 71, surely that would need a majority of at least 2 as well.
Yes, you would think that would be a good kal vachomer, wouldn't you?
Did it apply?
I can't remember just off the top of my head now whether we've already dealt with that when we went earlier on when we talked about the majority of 2, or whether it's later on. I'll have to find it. It's something which is discussed, Leon.
I don't think we've dealt with it.
No, I think it might be later on in the Gemarah that we come to it. Now,
because the decisions that they make, the great Sanhedrin, the decisions they make are much more important than a capital case.
They could result in the death of the whole town.
Yes.
For Ir Hanidachat. So you're right. The Kal V'chomer must hold. And I'm sure that we discuss. I've read it somewhere. So if we haven't yet done it, then it must be later on in the Gemarah. Okay. So the other corollary is that in the middle court, which is the 23 judge court, we would also have this same problem. We'd need 23 judges voting the same way, plus a majority. So we'd have to have 45. 45 would be the minimum. 23 voting one way, 22 voting another way would be 45. And we know it isn't 45 because we know it's 23. How do we know it's 23? From another pasuk. Let me see if I can catch him out this time. Where do we learn, David Marks? Where is the pasuk that tells us that we need 23 for a capital court?
Pass.
I've got him. Okay. It's in Parshat Masei Bamidbar, chapter 35. V'shaftu ha'edah bein ha'makeh u'bein goel adam al ha'mishpatim ha'ela v'hitzilo ha'edah et ha'rotzeach. This is the case. We've discussed this a few weeks ago. It was before you joined us, David. We discussed this earlier on. Why 23 for a capital case? Because when the Torah is talking about the psukim I just mentioned there, it's talking about the inadvertent killer. There is a Goel Hadam who wants to get revenge for this inadvertent murder, this inadvertent killing, I should say. And he has to run off to the cities of refuge. And the pasuk tells us, "V'shaftu ha'edah," and the congregation shall judge him. And we know that an edah is 10 people. We know that from this 10 people. How do we know that an edah? When it uses the word edah, it is 10 people, and that is where we get, by the way, the source for a minyan. Here, David, is another chance for you. Where do we know edah is a minyan?
Isn't that with the congregating against Moshe and Aaron at the rock?
It's the Meraglim.
Oh yeah, the Meraglim. Yeah.
The Meraglim. What are the words? You'll know the words better than me. Where it says, "Stand away from this evil congregation, and I will kill them."
Yeah.
So the Meraglim, the spies, were 12 spies. There were 2 spies who gave a good report, Yoshua and Kalev, which left 10 which gave a bad report. Hashem says to Moshe, "Stand aside." It's in Parshat Shlach Lecha. I can't just put my finger on it at the moment. Stand aside, and I'm going to destroy this evil congregation. And that congregation was of 10 people. From there, the Torah tells us that whenever we use the word edah, it means 10 people. So we have the use of the word edah with our inadvertent killer twice. That tells us it was 20 judges needed. We need a majority we can't have an even number, so that's 21, but we need a majority of 2, so that means it's 23. So that's where we get the 23 for a capital case. So we have a Torah source for the capital case being 23, and therefore, says Rabbi Abahu in his dismissive gesture, it can't be 45. Because the Torah tells us it's 23. The Sanhedrin can't be 141 because the Torah tells us it's 70 or 71. And so Rabbi Abahu dismisses his colleagues and says that that cannot be right. Therefore, that's why Rabbi Abahu is migadef. He is dismissive of this this whole thing. We'll just quickly learn what we've just said using the words, and then we'll stop. So, migadef ba Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu dismisses this suggestion. Elameata, because from here you would have to say Sanhedrin Gdola Tricha 141. You'd have to have 141 in the great Sanhedrin Kadesh Yigamer Hadin B'Shivim Ve'echad, so that 71 would all vote the same way on the verdict. Or Tehei Sanhedrin Ktana, and the small Sanhedrin Tzricha 45, we would need 45 Kadesh Yigamer Hadin, so that the verdict could be issued Bishlosha Ve'esrim, with 23 judges all voting the same way. Ella. But Esvali Shivim Ish Amar Rachmana, the merciful one, i.e. the Torah, has said, gather me 70 men. Mishat Asifa Shivim. So therefore, that means it must be 70. The Torah also says, V'shaftu ha'ida, v'hitzilo ha'ida. Twice it uses the expression ida. Nami Mishat Shmitata Ida. That means at the time of judgment, there has to be these Eidah, this 20. Hachinami, v'nikrav ba'al habayit el ha'elohim, mishat kriva shlosha. So Rabbi Abahu says, so in the same way as the Torah tells us these numbers and your numbers are that you're doubling up so that everyone has to say the same thing to get a judgment, it's not right. When it says 3, because it says ha'elohim 3 times, it means 3, it doesn't mean 5. And we reject or Rabbi Abahu rejects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi at this time. And that is where we will stop right now. And the next exciting installment will be an attempt by the Gemarah to square the circle. No, is that right? Square the circle, round the square, whatever it is, to get the opinions back in line again. It will be an attempt to try and get the two opinions of Rabbi Abahu and Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi to be back in line. Okay, any questions before we go on? Just before I unmute you, 1 second. Brian Hurwitz has asked the question, can judges abstain? No, judges cannot abstain. In halachic court, the judges cannot abstain. Otherwise, we'd have all sorts of problems with a bet din shakul. We could never have a verdict. We could potentially never have a verdict. Any questions? I'm going to unmute you all now. Any questions before we finish?
Johnny.
David.
Yeah, in the first case that Rabbi Abahu brings, the Sanhedrin Hagdolah, his calculation according to Rebbe is 141, but if a majority of 2 is required, wouldn't that calculation be 103?
Yeah, it would be, and that's I think why Leon asked questions about the majority, the Kal V'chomer onto on the Sanhedrin. I don't know the answer to that. I would have thought it would be 143 as well. I need to look that up. I've read it somewhere, and I think it's coming up in the Gemarah later on. Anybody else got any questions before we go?
In a capital,
Michael Krause has finished his breakfast.
Sorry, Nachum. Go ahead, Nachum.
In a capital case in the UK, is it a majority or a unanimous decision
in the
to
UK,
execute somebody?
Correct me if I'm wrong, UK lawyers here, but in the UK, they have capital cases, and the judge will normally want a unanimous decision. We don't have any capital cases in the UK anyway anymore. I think in the UK there's only high treason that you can be.
Really?
Yes, is that right, Howard and Julia? Only high treason.
I couldn't
As
hear.
far
I'm
as I
sorry. Could you
recollect,
repeat it?
it's a long time
Wait, we
since I
can't hear.
studied all this.
Okay, so Nachum, the answer to your question is that there isn't any capital cases in the UK. Yes,
We
Howard.
have unanimity.
I
We
couldn't
don't
hear
have
the
Yeah,
question.
but
Sorry.
anymore.
we can't execute people. I mean, I'm so surprised. This is really shocking to me that we're going to execute someone, and not everyone.
Yeah, but
is
you're
going-
talking about juries. You were discussing juries
Nachum's
before.
talking about our capital cases here in the Gemarah, which we can do on a majority, not on a unanimous
Yes,
vote.
but for America, he's talking about juries.
Yes,
So,
I'm talking about juries. You
so
can't
when
convict
we
somebody.
had capital punishment a long time ago in England for murder, at
Oh,
that time
I
they actually did have unanimity.
I
They changed it.
They changed it, the majority verdict.
But in the United States, you
You're
need
talking
you
about
need a
people who are
unanimous.
qualified. Juries aren't qualified. You're not talking about the position of judges.
They now ask for a majority verdict, but don't forget there's no death penalty anymore.
Except for high treason.
But
Well,
suppose they make a
if
mistake.
you like.
But
Jonathan,
you're talking about juries, not judges.
Yeah.
It's not a,
We're
it's not
talking
the
about
same
judges.
comparison.
yeah, but if they make a mistake, this sanhedrin, they make a mistake, and they commit someone to be killed, hung. Let's say they hang him, and God forbid they made a mistake. How can this be that the other half are okay with this?
They don't have legal assurance.
I think the answer to that question is evident in the UK law, which is why the UK got rid of capital punishment, because of the potential for miscarriages of justice. I guess in the halachic state, we are confident that our judges will be given siyata dishmaya, will be given help from heaven to make the right decisions. The fact is, that is the halacha, that capital cases require a majority of 2. However much you don't like it, Nachum, that is the halacha.
Yeah, but hold it a
Don't
second.
understand it.
The
How-
Sanhedrin hardly ever issued a death penalty. They said
Oh.
it was very unusual for any Sanhedrin to issue even one death penalty.
That is true. The Gemarah tells us that a Sanhedrin which issued a death penalty once in 70 years was considered to be a cruel Sanhedrin. So remember that we're talking theoretically here when we're talking about these Mishnayot and this Gemarah. In fact, it was very rare. For example, let me just briefly talk about the Ben Sorer Umoreh, the rebellious son. The rebellious son who we speak about in Parshat Ki Tetzei. We take him out, this rebellious and gluttonous son, we take him out, and his parents bring him to the Bet Din, and his parents say, this son of mine, he's a glutton, he's terrible, he doesn't listen to my voice, he doesn't listen to the voice of his mother, and everybody stones him to death. Well, the Gemarah tells us that never happened. Why didn't it happen? Because they bring all sorts of different reasons. For example, it says in the Pasuk that he has to listen to the voice of his mother and his father, which means that his mother and his father have to have exactly the same voice. And no 2 human beings have exactly the same voice, and therefore it's impossible, and therefore it was impossible ever to have a Ben Sorer Umoreh put to death, and he was only there to teach us principles. So in fact, Nachum, you can take comfort in what Michael Krauss correctly told us, that death penalties were given out very, very, very rarely. Once in 70 years was considered a cruel Beit Din. So whereas the principle is majority, in fact, as we said a few weeks ago, the halacha is built in, designed to try and acquit people and not to put them to death. And the proof of that is what Michael said, is that they only ever put anybody to death less than once in 70 years.
If you wanted to really have that happen, you could make the decision to be unanimous, And then you've got the same effect that everybody must agree to this person to be killed.
You could, and maybe after 120 years, that can be one of the things you discuss with the Scottish Foreign Minister.
Yeah, I'll discuss it with Hashem. Hope later instead of earlier.
Yeah, please God. Okay, fine. I'll say goodbye. And Julia, just hang on. I want to have a chat with you about the event.